Hey there, I'm Eva with Overland Expo, and we are going to spend a little bit of time today talking about overlanding solo. As much as I love traveling with my friends and the rest of the overlanding community, there is nothing better than spending time by yourself on your motorcycle or in your truck out in the open. There's something so empowering, so freeing, and so connecting to the natural world when you're traveling solo that you just don't get with a group. That said, there are some things that you have to keep in mind and take into consideration that are a little bit different when you're traveling by yourself rather than traveling with a group of other people. I always like to say it's good to plan for the worst but expect the best. So make sure you have all your bases covered and make sure you're ready to have your own back when you're traveling alone. Because if something goes wrong and you're far, far out in the wilderness or in the backcountry, however you choose to travel, you are going to be the one that needs to ultimately get yourself out of there. So when you're traveling solo, I always like to start with doing a lot of research ahead of time. And there are so many fantastic resources for understanding the trails, understanding your skill level, and understanding navigation when you're out in the backcountry on your own. I personally like to use paper maps in conjunction with digital technologies to plan my routes and to understand the trails that I'm starting to get into. Let me show you a couple of my favorite things. Paper maps such as these are a great way to start to understand the backcountry around you. The Butler motorcycle maps are fantastic for motorcycle travel specifically, and the backcountry discovery routes are pre-planned routes that are perfect for, I would say, advanced beginners to get out into the backcountry on their motorcycles or in their four-wheel drive vehicles. These maps are really fantastic because they detail the trails for you, and there are GPX tracks available on the BDR website that you can put into your GPS and take with you on the trail. Other maps, such as this Nevada map, has all sorts of information as far as different land use areas, so you can make sure that you're not traveling overland where you ought not be, such as in a designated wilderness area, that you're sticking to main roads, and that you're making really good decisions as far as where you camp. In addition to paper maps, I also like to use apps such as onX Off-Road and websites like Trails Off-Road. Resources like these have tons of information about the kind of trails that we want to get ourselves into, so you know when you're about to get on something that might be out of your league. Some trails that are challenging on a motorcycle are easier in a truck, and vice versa. So when we look at a resource such as onX and we see a trail rating of, say, 2 out of 10 or 5 out of 10, we always need to take that with a grain of salt and consider what kind of vehicle we're driving while we're in that terrain. If you're on a motorcycle, maybe step it down a couple notches, and where if you think you're a level 6 rider, maybe when you're by yourself, you want to hang out in the 3 to 4 range. It's really important when you're traveling solo to make sure you're not pushing your comfort zone too terribly far. Once you get out of the comfort zone and you get into that danger zone, that's where you can really get into trouble. And to avoid that, that just starts at home, planning, spending time with your maps, spending time with your apps, and really understanding the terrain that you're about to be traveling in. In addition to understanding the terrain that you're traveling in, it's also really important to have somebody on the other end of the line who knows where you are, who can be a resource if you do get into trouble. So making sure that you have a reliable person back home somewhere that you're touching base with on a regular basis, and they should know when to expect a call from you, when to expect a text from you, or when to expect a ping from your satellite communicator. When it comes to satellite communicators, there are all kinds of great solutions out there, but whatever they are, make sure you know how to use them before you leave. Whether you're using a Garmin InReach or a Zoleo or a spot tracker, make sure that you have your friend on the other end of the line who knows when to expect to hear from you and that you know how to use the device 100% yourself. I can't stress enough how important vehicle maintenance is when you're traveling solo. Before you leave home, make sure your vehicle is in prime working order, and as your trip progresses, make sure that you're constantly checking on all of the key elements of your motorcycle or your truck. When I take a look at my motorcycle before I leave, I always want to make sure that my tires are in good shape, that my chain is well lubed, that my lights and my controls are all working, that everything, my fluids and everything is topped off as it should be. The same goes for a truck. You want to make sure that you know your recommended tire pressure settings for the kind of terrain that you're going to be traveling. If you're going to be airing up or airing down, make sure you have the tools to do that. Tires are one of the things that wear the most when you're overlanding, and traveling solo and repairing a tire by yourself in the backcountry can be intimidating. So make sure you've practiced those skills at home in your driveway in a stress-free situation. Make sure you know how to patch or repair a tire. Make sure you know how to get your spare out from underneath your truck if that's where it's living, and make sure you know where your lug nuts are and that you have the appropriate wrenches and jacks to make the maintenance needs you have in the field. You never want to head out anything less than 100% prepared to have your own back. Make sure your toolkit is totally comprehensive and that you know that you have the tools in there to do the repairs that you think you might anticipate needing. So once you have all of the safety stuff under your belt, once you know that you've got your own back, once you know that you've got somebody on the other end of the line who can help you out if you get into a bind, then you can really relax into the joys of solo travel. Traveling solo puts you in a completely different position than when you're traveling with friends. It instantly immerses you in the culture in which you're traveling. When you're on a motorcycle and you get off and you take your helmet off, you're surrounded by people and you're looking at them at eye level, and they are from a completely different place than you are. And that's a great way to make new friends, to understand new cultures, and to learn more about yourself. When you're traveling in your truck and maybe you're even crossing international boundaries or just going into a different state, you're surrounded by a different flavor of people, and meeting new people out on the road is one of the best things about travel. And there's something really special about traveling solo, and that is you tend to meet people more when you have to. When you're traveling with your friends, you tend to hang out with each other. You sit down at the restaurant together, you share stories together. But when you're traveling solo, we kind of tend to find new friends out on the road, and it's a really magical experience. In addition to finding new friends out on the road, meeting random strangers out on the road, we also get this completely unique experience with the natural world. As overlanders, we tend to find ourselves in far-flung remote locations out in the backcountry, camping, exploring, hitting roads that are further afield from what the normal average individual tends to get on a regular basis. And when we're out there, the experience of the natural world really hits home. It's the thing that I love most about traveling solo and being out all by myself, camped out under the stars with a big glorious moon, maybe even a hint of the aurora borealis if I'm far enough north, or the Milky Way if I happen to have a particularly clear night. These experiences of nature are the things that really move me, and they keep me pushing and driving and getting further afield than ever before. One of the big differences between traveling solo and traveling with a group is your pacing and your flexibility. When you travel with a group, even if it's with one other person or 10 other people, you tend to have to stick to a more concrete plan. If there's a whole bunch of people in your group, a whole bunch of different vehicles, you have to have a better sense of your known waypoints and your known directions, so you all end up at the same campsite together. When you're traveling by yourself, you get to make those decisions on the fly and in the moment. If you want to linger for a little bit longer under a shade tree while you eat lunch, you get to do that. If you want to take a left turn instead of a right turn, you get to do that. One of the wonderful aspects of traveling solo is that sense of freedom, and that freedom to make the decisions, to flow, to follow your own whims is absolutely amazing and freeing in so many different ways. Over the course of my life as a traveler, I've had lots of great trips with my friends, but some of the most impactful trips for me have been long solo trips, whether it's been in South America or across the United States. Those trips where I'm all by myself are the ones that mean the most to me. I've spent hundreds of nights by myself in remote locations, on my motorcycle, in my vehicle, and just on foot backpacking into the backcountry. And those solo trips really are the things that have made me who I am as a traveler today. Yes, it can be scary. Yes, it can be intimidating. But once you take that first step into solo travel, you're going to appreciate those times by yourself and times with your friends even more. I've only just scraped the surface as far as what it takes to travel solo, and if you want to learn more, a great option would be to come to an Overland Expo event. They're all over the country. I'm sure there's one not too terribly far away from you. An Overland Expo is a great place to learn the skills and tips and tricks that you need to safely get yourself solo into the backcountry. And if you're just sitting at home and you want to flip open the computer, overlandexpo.com has tons of resources for the solo traveler and the novice overlander and the experienced traveler alike.